I felt like not only did I have a bad race, I lost it for my team. I let down my teammates, my coach, everyone, right? Sometimes we even feel like we let God down. So the relief of knowing going into the following track season and cross country season that as long as I went out there and gave my best and was living out my faith to the best as I could, there was nothing I could do on the track or even in my life that was going to allow God to love me, more or less.
Okay, welcome to, or welcome back to, the Altitude Project podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Madden. I serve on staff with the Altitude Project. The Altitude Project has become a community of athletes that have been transformed by God's love and grace. So the purpose of these conversations is to understand how they have encountered God's love and grace, how they came to place their faith in Jesus Christ, and how their faith has influenced how they view themselves, running, and the world around them. Now, before we introduce today's guest, if you want to join or support our community, there's a few ways you can do that. First, if you're a college runner, you can come to camp this summer. Head over to altitudeproject.com or use the link in the show notes or description to register. Second, tell your friends. Tell them about us. Share this podcast with them. Show them how to find it and subscribe. This is the best way to reach others. Finally, on the website, again, that's altitudeproject.com, you can learn more about how you can support the camp with your finances or prayers. All right, this episode's guest is Amanda Rego. She competed under the name Amanda Winslow at Florida State University, where she was a 7-time All-American, including an NCAA runner-up finish in the indoor mile in 2013. She then went on to run professionally before retiring a few years ago, with the 1-mile personal best of 4:26. She is now a coach at Metro State Denver University in Colorado, where she is living a passion that she has had since very early in her running career. This was such a fun conversation because Amanda's testimony, which you'll hear in just a little bit, her story of how she made her faith in Christ her own, is a wonderful example of how centering your life on Christ can transform how you view running or your sport, failures and successes, as a way to glorify God and grow in His likeness. Amanda shares how she came to this realization, which wasn't easy, and how experiencing God's love is more valuable than anything you can achieve on the cross-country course or on the track. And that gave her the freedom to passionately pursue her goals in running without the emotional risk of letting others down and without feeling guilty about how much she was investing in running. Both of those can be challenging for Christian athletes or athletes in general. The thought of letting others down or the guilt of investing so much into your sport. So if that's you, I encourage you to pay attention to Amanda's story, the shift in how she now views successes and how she came to see running as a way to worship God and be fulfilled in that way. I love the clarity with which she speaks about the lessons she's learned. So you can tell that she has spent a lot of time deep in thought about these things and is living them out. So with that, let's dive into this conversation with Amanda Rego. Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's a busy week, but yeah, I like that. I like being challenged and yeah, got some exciting stuff coming up. So that's good. And I'm
Awesome.
excited for this conversation. We've never met, but we have a connection through Altitude Project.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know that you were really successful in college and running post-collegiately. Now you're a coach and have a passion for coaching and have been impacted by your faith in Christ. But yeah, I'm just curious how you view who you are. So yeah, who is Amanda Rego? How would you answer that question?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question.
It is.
Um, I mean, I'd say, I try to remember to keep things in priority. So, a child of God, a wife, I'm a mother, um, and a mother to be, and a coach, and then obviously former competitive um, middle distance runner. So that's a big part of my identity, obviously, is running, but also my faith.
Yeah. How did that faith begin if we go back to yeah, where you put your faith in Christ or how that took shape for you?
Yeah, so I was, born into a Christian family, and so faith was kind of always something that was a part of my life growing up. But I think, like all of us, there came a point. For me, it was really right around the time when I went to Altitude Project in college, where I feel like my faith became my own, and um, I really made it a priority to not just be something that was like a small part of my life, but to be, you know, the center of my identity. And so, yes, it's been a journey, like all of us. There's been moments where I felt really close to God, and other moments of my life where I've struggled. But I would definitely say college was that time of really um, forming that relationship with Jesus Christ and making making him more of you know, um, a father, a friend, just that relationship rather than just someone you read about in Sunday school or something like that.
Yeah. So you came to Altitude Project. What year were you in college?
So it was after my sophomore year of college.
Okay. And how did the Altitude Project help you to develop that faith and that deepen that relationship with Christ?
Um, I think the biggest thing for me was before coming to Altitude Project, like I said, viewed my faith as this separate thing. Um, I went to church and said I believed in God and I prayed here and there, but it was not the center. I would say running was, in all honesty, the center of my life. It was what everything else revolved around um, before kind of that time period in my life, my sophomore year of college. And it was a combination of things that had happened before that trip, but especially what I learned during that trip was just that God can use your sport. He can work through you, and that you don't have to compartmentalize everything and say, okay, I'm either a Christian and everything I do about my life has to do with God and faith in Christianity, or I'm a runner and I'm going to focus a lot on running. You can do both. And so that was really, I don't know why before that I just didn't realize that was possible to still really try to um, give the most to my sport and to God. And so once I came away from that trip, realizing that not only was I not only the only, sorry, I wasn't the only person who was struggling with that, those same um, identity challenges, feeling like your whole identity is wrapped up in being a distance runner because it does take a lot of time and energy. And so meeting other fellow believers who were struggling with that and seeing that this was something that God could use. He could use my sport, um, and that I didn't have to give it up and just, go move away to some foreign country. And that wasn't the only way that I could, serve God. I could do it right where I was with the talents and gifts that He gave me.
Yeah. Isn't that an awesome shift in perspective?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And how did that impact your running after that?
It definitely made me view running differently. I still was extremely competitive, but, prior to coming to Altitude Project, um, like I said, I put so much of my worth into my performances, and I had a really poor performance the cross country season prior to that summer, and I was in a really low place because essentially if I had run the race that I was, fit enough to run, our team would have won a national championship. And so I felt like not only did I have a bad race, I lost it for my team. I let down my teammates, my coach, everyone, right? Sometimes we even feel like we let God down. And so, yeah, the relief of knowing going into the following track season and cross country season that I could still, as long as I went out there and gave my best and was living out my faith to the best as I could, you know, I there was nothing I could do on the track or even in my life that was going to allow God to love me, more or less. And so it's just really freeing knowing that you could still go out there and give your heart and soul to this sport. And sometimes it'll really reward you. And sometimes it's not always fun and it's not always fair, but I think that's what got me through a lot of the tough races or injuries and setbacks and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, so I wanted to ask about failure and success because athletes handle those things differently. So how did you think about the failures in your career?
Yeah, so like I said, that one race in particular, my sophomore year cross country race, was what I would say was like the biggest failure of my career. Because it's pretty tough when you feel like you let your team down and lost a
Mm.
national championship
Yeah.
because of a bad race. I mean, I was All American my freshman year, and then I don't even remember what place I was my sophomore year, but it was 100 and something place. So definitely not what I was expected to do that day. And yeah, at the time, I viewed it, I was devastated. I was ready to honestly quit the sport because my thought process was, well, from the moment track ended till November, whatever date cross country nationals was, I felt like I'd done everything I could every single day, every hour of the day, right. I ate right. I slept well. You know, had all these amazing workouts. And then all of that for nothing was kind of the attitude that I had. So why continue? If this, if you can do all of the right things and success isn't guaranteed, I really started to question if it was worth it, which was a really, maybe momentarily or momentary view of things, but that's honestly how I felt. So I was really um, kind of at a loss. But that season and that race in particular forced me to view failure in a different way. Because in our sport, every single athlete has ups and downs. It's impossible to win every race and set a PR every single race week after week. And so going into the following indoor season, I remember really just trying to, you know, let go of those expectations. And I actually did perform a lot better. Um, but even going forward to beyond college, I had a lot of injuries and 3 different surgeries post-collegiately, which were really tough to come back from. But I think my faith always played a factor in my ability to overcome stuff because it was always this idea that, well, running is a huge part of who I am, but it's not everything. And so there was always that peace of mind in knowing that, again, God will love me even if I fall on my face, even if I don't finish this race or if I don't finish well. Um, and, also I think just knowing that there's always another one. And whenever you do eventually retire, like I did, there's always a next thing. There's always something that we can, um, you know, do with our gifts and talents and things like that.
Yeah. That's got to be so frustrating to put everything into a race and have it not go anywhere like you had hoped.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the longer you're in this sport, at some point we all experience that. Um, and, I tell my athletes a lot of times, like, our sport comes down to it's hard work. You put in the work most of the time, it'll pay off, right? But there is some degree of luck, so to speak. Some people just have bad luck. They have a bad day. Sometimes it's unexplainable. And then other big part of our sport is just staying healthy. Injuries are a big part of distance running. And so Hopefully they're not too big of a part of your story, but for those out there who are struggling with that, um, you know, it's uh, there can definitely be a positive side and purpose and meaning behind it, but it's just really hard, I think, in the moment.
Yeah. What do you think that you were hoping for or searching for by investing so much into that cross country season?
I think, honestly, at the time, I was just on that climb of wanting the next thing and um, kind of that superficial idea of, well, if I win a national title, I'll be happy. Um, and I think a lot of, really elite athletes get stuck in that mindset. It's hard to say because we didn't get it done. We never won a title in all 4 years. We were close every single year. And I think, yeah, and in the end, it was like a blessing in disguise because I think had we won, we would have been happy and celebrated. But I probably would have, a couple days later, gotten right back to the drawing board and said, okay, what are my goals for indoor? And, if indoor didn't go well, you get right back to, well, next, what's going to happen in outdoor? And it never really stops, even beyond sport. You graduate, you go into the working world, and there's always, as competitive people, I feel like there's always that game of comparison, right? Wanting more, wanting more, wanting more. Um, so I know it was a blessing in disguise that I had a tough day that day to learn that lesson that there's more to life than just winning.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think success can be dangerous sometimes. Like it can put you at uh give you a different perspective and maybe overestimate your ability even. But yeah, it's like you said, it's on to the next thing. And
Mm.
yeah, it might not make you happy. Like, yeah, you would celebrate a championship, but it wouldn't it wouldn't last. You'd be on to the next thing pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think how you view success is an interesting one for athletes. Um, so yeah, I was wondering how you handled your success, and yeah, how you viewed that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, I think it's changed a lot over the years, how I handle success. I think as a competitive person, I'm always still kind of searching for that next thing. Um, and I think that's just, you know, evidence that worldly success, whether it's in running or something else, career, things like that, they'll never fully satisfy you. And as human beings, we know this. I know that to be true, but I still fall into that trap, even as a coach. Um, you know, a- as soon as one season ends, we just ended indoor track. And so now it's like, what could we do better? So I think that's just a natural tendency. But I think for me, what I've really learned, especially now as a coach, and now that I've been in this sport for so many years, is to see success differently and view it beyond more than just the numbers, the stats, the PRs, the titles, things like that. Because there's been some years of um, my own career, whether it was being on a team or now coaching teams, where I can sit back and say that was a really successful season in other ways. For example, team culture is a big part of cross country. And so I view it as a success when I see our team culture gets better, when our athletes are supporting each other more. Um, they're warming up and cooling down together, not because I make them, but because they want to. Things like that, those are successes too. And so I think that's something that I didn't really even think about when I was a collegiate athlete. I thought all about one thing, the title, winning or being All American or something like that. But when I look back, some of the really special things about being on those teams was the friendships, the relationships, the just camaraderie of bonding over suffering together. So I think that's the one thing that's changed in how I view success.
Really cool. Yeah, that's somewhat similar to me. and that I found a lot more joy in running, focusing on the relationships on my team instead of, doing what performing to whatever level.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm. But yeah, don't want to gloss over the stats and PRs. I mean, you're 7 times All-American, including an NCAA runner-up in college. Um, so yeah, you were performing at a really high level. So I think, the listeners would be interested in understanding what you thought made you or allowed you to compete at that level or such a high level.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I would say, you know, the biggest thing for me, like when I went from being an inexperienced middle school runner to, being at a really high level nationally in high school and in college and beyond was really just thinking of running as a lifestyle. That's what I talk to my athletes out about a lot. I do believe to be at your very best in this sport, it has to come down to what you do outside of practice. Um, and so that's where the little things come in, like nutrition and sleep, and even your spiritual and mental health, taking care of those areas. And if you're doing all those little things, injury prevention, stretching, core, all of that stuff, I feel like I just fine-tuned a little bit more year after year. And of course, there's a fine line because I think sometimes as distance runners, we can become obsessive about those things. And so it has to be in a healthy way. But I really do believe that I was lucky to have really great coach who knew, what I needed. She provided excellent training, had really high level teammates to push me when I came to FSU. There were already several Olympians on the team or who had recently come through the program. So to have those women, right there in front of me, it was like a carrot, dangling in front of your face. You just knew, like, if I could keep up with so and so, I'm going to make it. And so that was kind of my attitude, even though I didn't necessarily have the stats to say that I should have been able to run with some of those women. I think a big part of it is just belief in yourself. So, good coach, good teammates, good self-confidence, and then just all of those little things. And then just part of it, like I said, is the luck of staying healthy because distance running is hard on the body. And it wasn't until after college that I had some setbacks and injuries that I think if I had had those during college, my career probably would have looked completely different. So I was really blessed to stay healthy for the most part for most of my 4 years.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's about living the lifestyle of running, having great coach and teammates, self-confidence, and the recovery. Is that, did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you, you also mentioned about mental and spiritual health. Um, that's an interesting way to put it. How do you uh, train those things, or how do you take care of those things?
Yeah. That's a good question. Um, you know, I say mental and spiritual, but I think they're sometimes two separate, but two things that also go together. Sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes a little bit uh, different, but either way, I think we have a lot more anxiety, depression, um, things like that in our modern day world. And I think there's probably a whole number of reasons for that. But, those things have to be addressed because not only do they affect your running, but they affect your whole life and your whole life affects your running. And so, you know, it, I feel like I was lucky where in college I was pretty happy and, for the most part, wouldn't say that I, struggled severely with mental health things, but I definitely would say that that point in my life, especially around my sophomore year, was when I kind of did start to have some struggles. And I think the spiritual component was the answer. Um, I was kind of depressed and down about, my running and what am I doing with my life and all of that, those kinds of questions. were starting to surface, and it was, I don't know, luckily I kind of just knew that I needed to turn to God in that moment and uh, pray about it and see what he had to say. And that was really what led me to go to the Altitude Project. Was I was like searching for answers at that time in my life. Um, and so ever since then, there was a shift. I came back to my campus and started a Bible study and got to know the girls on my team really well. And we did Bible study together, you know, quite often, and just got to know each other on a really deeper spiritual level. And that helped all of us through the highs and lows and the struggles of college. And just other things for me personally, I like to journal and read. I'm not someone who has the great ability to sit and pray for a really long time or meditate or focus. I just I lose track of things when I try to do that. So, I think it's about finding what works for you, finding out about yourself. How do you relate to God? How do you best communicate with God? And for me, a lot of that was journaling. And then for years and years, I kept a blog where I just kind of poured out all of my thoughts about my faith and how they coincided with running. And I think a lot of that, I wanted to help other people, other Christian runners specifically, who were struggling with different things. That was part of why I wrote all those blog entries. But part of it too was it was kind of therapeutic for me to just get it out on paper, what I was really feeling. And so I think that, you know, is really important from a spiritual standpoint, but also as a runner, so much of our sport is mental. And so if we're not in a good mental place or a good spiritual place, I really do think it does affect our performance. If not, right away, eventually, it starts to kind of build up. And so that all of those things I think helped, lead to my success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with that. I think their mental and spiritual health are very much intertwined. And yeah, if you're in the right spiritual place, then yeah, it just flows from there. Self-confidence was another interesting one that you mentioned. Do you do you work at that, or how do you train self-confidence?
Yeah. I've worked with different sports psychologists over the years, and I think there's a lot of different exercises out there to improve your self-confidence. And it is kind of like running. The more you repeat those things, the better you become at it. Just like in distance running, you have to go out there and run so many miles before you're going to get better. But some of it was the same kind of thing. Like for me, writing, like I said, I like to journal. So writing things down, specifically keeping a good log after workouts and things, I felt like really helped build my confidence, because sometimes we tend to forget about the really great races or the really great workouts, and we just default back to that last bad race or bad workout. And we start to lose confidence there because we're like, oh, well, I couldn't finish that last 1K rep on pace, so I must be out of shape. I must not be at the level I thought I was. And the reality is, if you keep a log or something like that, you can look back and say, wow, I had 5 really good workouts before this. So from that's a really specific example, I guess. And yeah, as much as I said I'm not great at meditation and things like that, I did try to use some of those techniques with my sports psychologist in terms of just visualizing the success before the race. But also visualizing things not going well was another really good tip that I got, because especially in the 1500, it can be a tactical race. So if you only visualize yourself in the lead, winning by a lot, it's probably not going to play out that way. And so I learned how to visualize myself in difficult situations, like getting boxed in a race and having to find my way out and feeling confident in that moment and, not panicking. And so that was really helpful, to actually feel confident in the race itself.
Yeah, that's really cool. What did the distribution look like? Like how much you visualize success versus things not going well?
Oh, how much, like in terms of much time I spent visualizing things not going well?
Yeah.
Or, um, I mean, I think it's probably important, and I'm not a sports psychologist, but I say we spend a lot more time probably focusing on things going well because you don't want to probably flood your brain with
Hmm.
too much negativity, right? But it was more so, just learning how to see yourself get into difficult situations and then get out of them. And then, have that successful visualization still at the end. Um, because yeah, that's much more likely how, like I said, things are going to play out. Um, so yeah, that was I feel like that's next level visualization technique versus just always visualizing yourself winning an Olympic final and a medal. Like that's all great and all, but how realistic is that for you? What about visualizing yourself at that next, um, you know, meet that you're running and, you're not favored to win? How do you still visualize yourself being successful in that scenario?
Yeah. And what did that practice look like? Like, how often did you do it and for how much time?
Um, I couldn't give you an exact answer on that, but I will say that towards the end of my career, I really tried to incorporate it more often because it used to just kind of be here and there. And especially as a pro, where I really wanted to do, all the things I could to be at my best, I would take just honestly just 90 seconds or so of visualizing before I would start a workout. So it was kind of a part of my warm up routine, and that worked really well for me because I didn't have to focus for 10 minutes straight. Um, it was really quick and something I could just easily implement. And then there's other people that I think benefit from, maybe laying in bed at night the night before their race and spending 5 or 10 minutes visualizing. So I think that's probably really like individual, but that's what worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought this was interesting. I saw a feature on you at Florida State where um, you knew you wanted to be a coach during that time, and your coaching potential was endorsed by your coach and your teammates. Um, and now you're a coach, coaching athletes, and have a passion for coaching. Did that interest start even earlier in college, or yeah, how did you develop an interest in a coaching career?
Yeah, so it did actually start before college. I knew when I was looking at different schools that coaching was what I wanted to do, which is pretty surprising that that's what I am doing now. I think that's rare. But I think it went back all the way to, gosh, maybe my freshman year of high school. I remember distinctly being at this one meet where I was cheering on my teammates in, I think the 4x4, maybe the 4x8. And I remember screaming so loud, and this person came up to me and he said, "Are you the coach's daughter?" And I was like, "No." "Why?" And he's like, "Well, you should be a coach because you're really loud and he'd make a good coach." And I was like, "Okay." And I obviously remember that moment for a reason because I do think it was that spark. It was just like that light bulb went off where I was like, wow, I could do that. I guess that is something I could do one day. And that sounds awesome. Like, I would love that. And even back in high school, I was a complete running nerd. So I would um, make little like PDFs, little printouts of running tips for some of my younger, unexperienced teammates. And I handed that out at the beginning of the season. Um, so I don't know. I was probably maybe viewed as coach's pet, but I just loved the sport so much that I feel like I was already kind of acting as a coach even back then, just because I saw how fun it was to, taste success once you learned even just some of the basics, like the importance of drinking water, eating right, or, the little things. When I saw how much that helped me, I just wanted to pass that on to my teammates, and it's just kind of never stopped.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, yeah, really cool that you've, yeah, gone on that path and are following your passion now.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. What about coaching was appealing or significant to you?
I think again, just that joy that you get in helping someone else. experience success, and not just success, but just reaching their potential, I would say, which I believe that is kind of how I determine or how I define success. So yeah, for me, it goes beyond just getting someone to run a PR. I mean, that's the goal, and that's awesome, and it's really fun seeing them do that. But sometimes it's just getting someone to finish a workout, you know? And I experienced that joy, like I said, even as a teammate first, before I was officially a coach. I don't know. I think part of that whole transition of, running being this thing that was like my entire identity and, separate from my faith. Once I tried to, more intertwine the two, is when I was able to find, I think, even more joy in like my teammates' successes. Because then a race where, I had a bad day and we didn't win nationals turned into, well, if my roommate had an awesome day, as hard as it is, I could celebrate that. I can be happy for her. And again, that's sometimes really hard when you have a tough day and your roommate has a really great day or something like that. But I think I learned more and more how to view this sport as, it's a lot about relationships too. And if you lean into those relationships, you get so much more out of it than just your own successes or failures.
You mentioned about how you defined success. Is that from the team culture you mentioned earlier, and it's helping people find joy in reaching their potential? Is that how you would define success as a coach?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a combination of things, but I think ultimately it comes down to success is helping people um give their all, reach their potential. And that can be obviously performance related, times, PRs, awards, accolades, but it can also be, helping them reach their potential as a leader on the team, as a better teammate, helping them just grow into an overall better person. And I mean, of course, there's still no such thing as perfection, right? In terms of a better person. I mean, that's a big part of our faith, right? Is that we can never be like God. We're not perfect, and that's okay. But yeah, for me, that's a big part of success, is helping my athletes just grow as people and not just athletes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so coaches often, we talk about coaches having a legacy. So I'm wondering how you think about or define that term legacy.
Yeah, that is something that we talk about in our program a lot with our athletes. Here at MSU Denver, I talk about leaving your legacy. And what I mean by that when I tell them that is usually it's non-performance related. I mean, performance, again, like I'm very competitive, and you're going to leave a legacy if you make a national championship. You'll probably be remembered if you're an All-American or if you're in the Hall of Fame at your school. Obviously, people will remember you. But when I think of legacy, I think of like, how did you impact the people around you? And so that really is separate from the statistic side of things. And so, it's the relationships. It's how did you support your teammates? My goal as a coach, the kind of legacy I want to leave, is I want my athletes to remember first and foremost always that I cared about them and that I still care about them, long after they leave. And again, like that I hope they go on to become great mothers or fathers, or, do great in their career fields, and, this whole other, they have a whole nother life beyond this sport. And hopefully, a big part of the legacy too is just knowing that you gave your all, your attitude, your perseverance, your work ethic. Like, I think that can be a big part of your legacy. Again, whether you reach that ultimate goal or not, people will remember you for more of how you lived out the process, I think, than how you, you know, where you finished place wise or time wise.
Yeah, really cool. What is important about um, letting your athletes know that they are cared and loved? Why is that
Um,
so significant?
I think just from my own experience with a lot of different coaches and athletes I've been around, I think sometimes that's something that's neglected in our sport. And I don't ever want that to be the case. Hopefully, with my athletes, but I think because it's a big part of like our faith is that, that's how God views us. He cares about us first and foremost, at such a deep level that we can't even comprehend it. But, he cares about us as people, not just whether or not we win a race or get an A on the test or are making this huge salary or whatever it is, you know? And so it's trying to kind of emulate that um, as people and how we view each other.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So uh, do you have a favorite memory from Altitude Project?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say probably one of my favorite memories, probably just the different runs that we went on, um, especially I can't even remember the name of the specific run, but I know like the one where you're climbing a lot. Um, both times that I went to Altitude Project as a runner and later when I came back as like, a counselor, a leader, I was a little bit banged up injury wise, so I didn't get to do as far of runs or as long of runs as some of the other people. But I just, still remember that it was so beautiful. It was, I don't know, it just felt so close to God out there in nature. And also just the relationships with the people is, I think, the biggest thing. I can't believe it's been, well over 10 years. And I still feel like it was yesterday. I think just because of the people I met there, for some reason, just knowing them for 1 week, I felt like we'd known each other for a really long time. And I think that's just, only something you can explain when you've been there, but just that feeling of you're part of this family now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is amazing how much we grow in relationship in that 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I forgot that you were a counselor as well.
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide to come back and pour into, these athletes at Altitude Project?
Just the profound impact it had on my life, especially at a point where I really felt like I needed it. I think things could have gone very differently if I hadn't taken the time to explore those different things and go to camp and learn all of that stuff and form those relationships. So I just, yeah, I wanted to give that back. And um, I wish I could have gone back more frequently, but obviously when you're right after college, I was training and competing for 8 years. So there wasn't always a lot of time in the summer available, but yeah, I was really glad that I was able to make it back a few years ago. And also my husband came with me. And so we were both he was able to experience this thing that I'd been talking to him about for years and years. And now some of my own college athletes have gone out there and gotten to experience it. So it's just really cool to pass that on.
Yeah. What do you think about the camper that experience had such a transformational impact on your life when you went as a camper?
I think the most transformational, and I like that you use that word because that was kind of the theme. The year that I went was being transformed. Um, and so, yeah, I think it was just this idea that, I could live out my faith. Um, and and that year, the verse was Romans 12, and it talks about being a living sacrifice, like your life is a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And so I really um, thought of that as like my running. It's my living sacrifice. It's my um, thing that I can go out there every day and give to God. instead of feeling like taking all this time and energy and devoting it to running is like time I'm not giving to God, because that's how I viewed it before. And so that was just like transformational in how I viewed every day. Because, instead of thinking of all these hours spent on running related things as selfish, I was able to turn those into, this can be for something, for a greater good. And I think, it's been really cool to just see how God has opened up different doors after that to allow me to use my sport. Even in doing a talk like this never would have happened, if it weren't for that camp, and just all the people that I met there and stayed in touch with years later. It was just, that was the other big part of it for me, was knowing that I wasn't alone, that there are so many other Christian college runners out there who have the same highs and lows and doubts and struggles and questions. And that community, getting to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's so cool that that played a special role in your life. Yeah, I feel like I missed out not being a camper at Altitude Project. I came on staff a few years ago. But yeah, this has been awesome to hear about people's experiences and with yours specifically. So yeah, we appreciate you sharing and taking the time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Cool. So where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so mostly I am just on Instagram. I don't really do Twitter or other things, but you can follow me at Rego Runner is my Instagram handle. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. If you have questions about the Altitude Project or anything from this conversation, reach out to us at altitudeproject@gmail.com or on Instagram at Altitude Project. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please share this episode with your friends and on social media. Thank you to those who support the Altitude Project with your finances and prayers. Your support is crucial to the project and plays a significant role in the Great Commission. Lastly, let us know how you are challenged, inspired, or encouraged by these conversations. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, peace.